Hello and welcome back. In this chapter, we're talking about the product photographer's toolkit. So this is all the gear and tools that product photographer uses. So what type of camera would you recommend? What's like the cream of the crop?
I really prefer Phase 1. So it's a very large sensor, which contributes to image quality a great deal.
So you have like a crop sensor, which would be like an entry-level digital SLR, and then you have full frame, 35 millimeters, and that's like the Canon 5D range, things like that.
So Phase 1 is about 4 times the size of a full frame sensor.
That's huge.
Yeah, it's a giant. There's a lot of things that happen when you have a sensor that big. When you don't have to pack in your pixels as tightly, you tend to get smoother gradations, a little more image density. That kind of weight that you have to create in Photoshop, already there in camera. They're able to really get into the color science and the noise and all that stuff to get the most out of the images that you create with their cameras.
So medium format cameras, they sound awesome, they're super fancy, but they're also really expensive. I mean, you don't own one, I don't own one. How do most people go about even shooting with a medium format camera?
Well, like everything in photography, you always have to use the right tool for the job. So if your project requires to have that level of image quality and your budget allows you to, say, rent it, that's when you use it. You know? Or if you need it to do some sort of thing that you really can't do without the technology that's involved in those things, because they tend to lead the camera market in introducing innovation earlier.
Totally.
I mean, they really pioneered tethering before it was a thing. Even that table image we discussed earlier in the tutorial, the reason I used Phase 1 for that, other than the image quality, is that it was the only camera at the time that I could operate remotely. And we were suspending that camera above the table, so I couldn't reach it.
Right.
You know, so I had to really be able to operate it remotely.
Yeah. Big question. Is a medium format camera necessary for shooting product photography?
It's not, but it makes things a lot faster.
Okay.
I tend to have to do less image editing when I'm using medium format. There's less color shifts, there's more detail. There's also, like, people talk about the medium format feel. Your images feel more dimensional. There's like a depth to them. When you get your hands on the actual files, you'll feel it too. I mean,
and we're providing files, so you guys can actually get the original raw files that we shot here.
Yeah.
So we shot the same thing with a Canon 5D Mark III.
Yeah, we did.
And a medium format camera. Can we just take a look at these images side by side, and let's zoom into 100%.
Sure.
Let's see what the results are.
Sure. I mean, so on the left we have our Canon image, and this is the Phase 1 IIQ, and actually I got to back up on that. So
and these are both not edited at all. Is that correct?
I haven't touched color balance, exposure. It's just as they're shot in camera.
Got it. And they were on the same white balance settings and the same...
Yeah, I think they were both on strobe.
Already I'm seeing the image on the right. The pink is more vibrant.
Yeah.
We didn't do that.
Right. We also used the Phase 1 trichromatic 100 megapixel back. And it's supposed to be really good with color. They built the sensor in a certain way where there's less color contamination. So the colors are already going to be truer no matter what, regardless of whether it's medium format or Canon. When you're working with medium format, you generally have a shallower depth of field. Everything's amplified. So we wanted to have everything in focus. We had plenty of resolution, so we backed up a little bit.
Okay.
Also, just the lens on the medium format camera has a longer minimal focusing distance.
Right. So the cameras themselves are designed to be photographed a little bit farther back, which will give you more of your scene in focus. And they also come, in this case, it's a 100 megapixel image.
The flexibility of that system is paramount.
Okay.
So if you look at most of the raw images that we're going to provide, or even just that I shoot in general, I have a lot of space around my subject.
Right.
And that's just so I don't have to build space later. And
Totally.
so it's really flexible for designers, art directors, so they can put type or arrange it or cut it into even like a banner for a web ad without having to build more space around the actual subject.
Totally. So what I'm seeing immediately is the bag on the left is still a little bit bigger. You know, we were quite a bit closer, but the image on the right it looks more clean, and it also looks like we actually have more detail. Like the detail in our subject's hands looks more clear, like it's sharper almost.
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, it renders a little bit better. The lenses are sharper. You know, these are also relative 100%. So like this image is close to 5 times the size of the actual resolution of the image on the left.
Right.
So like there's still a lot of information there, you know.
Totally. What are some general guidelines for capturing great product photography photos for people shooting with an entry-level digital SLR or mirrorless, or even a full frame?
Yeah, so if you're shooting in the studio, no matter what I'm shooting with, I'm generally at f11. Because optically, that's like the sharpest aperture on any lens.
Any lens.
Based on the physics of how things are built and how optics work, f11 is going to be your sharpest.
And then, for the most part, we're backing up, right?
Yeah, because the closer you get to your subject with any camera, the more things that are going to come into play, like your depth of field will get shallower because of lens subject distance, and also lens warp will affect your object even more. Even with like your little cell phone,
Totally.
if you step back and you zoom in with it, you're going to get less lens distortion. Like,
Right.
It's still the same principle from iPhone to medium format camera.
So why exactly is sharpness important? Why are we shooting at f11? Why do we need things sharp?
So generally, you want to accurately describe your product for product photography, and if something's out of focus, it's not doing that. If you're a little blurry on the edges, it might not feel as solid or weighty or visually contiguous.
Interesting. So that's just like a purely photographic thing. Like, get your whole subject in focus. The end result is going to feel more solid. It's going to feel more real. It's going to feel like...
It's going to be the most descriptive,
Totally. So you're choosing your aperture, right? F11. Pretty much all the time you're going to be shooting at ISO 100 if possible,
If
right?
you can,
the lowest
yeah.
possible ISO.
Yeah, right.
You don't want a bunch of noise in these images.
If you're controlling all the light in the studio,
Right.
and you can shoot at those ideal conditions, why wouldn't you?
So no matter what camera people are shooting with, what are the big things they should look out for?
I mean, the big two are really, you want to keep your subject in focus, and the other one is back up. You'll avoid a lot of headaches and a lot of distortion if you're a little bit further away from your subject than you normally think you should be.
And that's true even on like a crop sensor camera?
It's true on every camera you would use for anything like that.
Well, in our next section, we are going to be talking about lenses, what are the optimal lens choices, what Ross prefers as far as lenses go, and how you can shoot beautiful products on the lenses that you currently own.